Hello, everyone, and welcome to the workshop on promoting artisan fragrance in a digital world. I am Karen Marin. I'm Paris-based. I'm on the editorial board for Exceptional, writing most of the original content. And joining me today is Dana Sandu, who has she has a wealth of fragrance knowledge and digital know-how. Dana's in California, and I'd like Dana to tell us a little bit about who she is, what she's done, and what she will be working on going forward.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Karen. Thank you for having me. I've been very excited about this. This was supposed to happen in April, and it's
Yes.
finally here. I get to talk about two things that I love. I operate on a day-to-day basis in high tech in Silicon Valley, and my role is in what we call the Internet of Things, which is the network of all the things, the smart things that we're now very involved with, particularly, since this shelter in place started. I operate in the space of real world and real-time data processing with a very clear focus on this Internet of Things. In my capacity, I usually have access to a lot of cross-functional data. And my job is to notice trends, which comes very, very handy in pretty much every walk of life that I turn my attention to and spend some time on. In a perfumista capacity, I can't call myself an expert, but I have a lot of years of experience documenting scent and olfaction. And I maintain two large digital communities in two different languages. My English-speaking community is called the Nose Nose. I research and write about perfume and perfumery, and I am very dedicated to try to educate as much as I can as large group as I can. I'm a contributor at CaFleureBon, so I write with them every once in a while. And yeah, that's where the connection happened. I am a data nerd, and I'm a fragrance and perfumery historian and documentarist. I write in between, and sometimes, like tonight, I get the chance to talk about both in the same sitting. So that's fantastic to me. So today, if I can help, I can speak to some of the things that I've learned. Of course, Internet of the Things is a huge, huge domain, but sometimes I do get to be involved with certain verticals and online retail. Therefore, online shopping is part of it, with everything that comes with it, from consumer behavior to touch points to the purchasing mechanisms and beyond. But I hope I can give you some insight in what I think is happening in the perfumery industry from this very, very obscure angle of digital interaction, which is an oxymoron for somebody who needs to smell something in order to interact with it.
Well, if I can get started, we'll launch right into some of the questions. And
Sure.
since the pandemic started, we've all been thrust onto the internet and online to communicate, to look for information, to be entertained, to shop, and discover new things. So how do you see that the digital environment has changed since the last 6 months?
Well, it's responding to a situation that's without precedent. As far as I'm concerned, I think artisan fragrance is suffering profusely. The rest of fragrance, not so much, but a lot of companies, a lot of brands are suffering, not because they lack the business, but because the business processes have shifted. So a brand needs to deal with, first of all, complexity, because perfume stores have closed, and when they open, they have to have new protocols that now have to be planned. And two, key ingredients and harvests are going unpicked. There's nobody to pick them, so that's a problem. The communities are not able to harvest crops. The alcohol is used for something else. What do you know? In-demand disinfectant and all that stuff. And it's becoming harder to obtain. Customers are demanding different products. They're not necessarily into buying perfume, but they're into buying fragrant stuff. Postal services, governments, all of these disruptions are creating a very complex problem for brands at the moment. Then there's a change in language, because it's one thing to experience and communicate through something that somebody feels, and another thing to have to communicate only through visual, through the eyes, right? Some brands go beyond that, and they do a combination of visual and auditory, and they go into video or podcasts, but still the information is coming through here, not through here. Then there's a change of power, because the brands used to be the ones with the know-how, telling people what to test, directing them through a store, offering, servicing, right? Now the consumer is the one who needs to go online and type something, to search for something, or to click when you tell them to click. It's becoming a self-service culture, which I think is very, very important, because it manifested a lot of layers. And the fourth thing that I think happened is the publics have diversified. Even though some brands have very loyal customers, those customers are stratified now based on online literacy. Some people don't know how to turn a computer on. Some people don't want to be on social. Some people have never shopped online because they believe in cash. You have to keep all of these things into consideration, and all of a sudden you have more than one audience. On the consumer side, because I think we need to speak about both. I think the consumer expectations have changed because their needs have changed. And some things are small. For example, I've noticed a need to be more excited about unpacking things. We didn't used to have this, because the need to be excited was covered in the store. When you pick something up that's beautiful, that you would not have money to own, but you pick it up, you take the cap off, stuff, that need was covered. Now it's not, and people get crazily excited about unboxing a kit of samples. And I think brands should pay attention to this, because that's unrealized, opportunity. But some things, of course, are big, and the biggest one is, with time on their hands, more time on their hands to kill, and a crisis at their backs, of course, consumers are starting to ask the why of fragrance. They're starting to care about the purpose of the brand. There needs to be a purpose. There was a fatigue at the end of 2019 when it comes to online activity for perfume customers and their interaction with their brands. But still, it's a huge industry. I mean, $51 billion, right, in fragrance every year. They were expecting it to grow 15%, but it's only apparently growing 3.7% into 2020, which is still great. USA, Brazil, Germany, UK, and China are still the biggest countries when it comes to perfume expenses. And everywhere, people are starting to care about the context. People are starting to care about the brand purpose. What is the brand trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? People want to see hope. They want to see that we'll survive this thing, that we're going to come out on the other side and everybody's going to be more loving, and they need hope. And in order to manifest this, or to find it, to cover that need, they're starting to look into brand purposes. There's a shift in conscience towards conscious consumerism, I guess you can call it. And I think paying attention to that is one of the best things, if not the top thing, a brand needs to pay attention to. And one of the more important actions to take would be to align or find a purpose if they don't have it already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now more than ever, it's so important for the brands to take actions that build their community, that communicate with the consumer, and that show that they have a purpose, and that they're authentic in the execution of what the purpose is.
Mhm.
So it's not just that you speak good, but you actually do good. You follow through with what you say. So how can a brand communicate that in a digital environment?
Oh, I think, like you said, they need to pay attention to the events. They need to know what's happening in the world and not necessarily take position, because we can't all care about everything, right? And brands, if they have an individuality and if they have a persona, that's what's called persona, not more than one. They have one identity. They probably care about some things more than others. Hopefully, they care about something, but they need to pay attention to the events, because some of their customers do care about other things than the brand stands for. Talk about racial inequities, elections all over the world, pandemic, boycotts, natural disasters. There's plenty to care about. Do not ignore them. Find a way within your voice to acknowledge not the issue, but the people's plight dealing with that issue. Whether you agree that there's an issue or not, you have to allow people to feel their feels. They're theirs to feel. And if you don't, one of the things that I came across a couple of months ago, which I thought you're going to find interesting, from the first interaction to the third interaction, if a person does not find the level of authenticity, since you mentioned it,
Yeah.
satisfactory in a brand, in online interactions, the first in the first instant, about 83 to 85% of them say, yes, I want to give this brand another chance. By the third look, a third look means, you stop in a different point on the page. It
Mm.
doesn't mean you come a third visit on a third day. By the third look, the third read of an unrelated sentence, so not in sequence, that goes down to 70%. And so
Interesting.
that's a matter of seconds. It's not even it's not even, it doesn't they don't have to sit on it. It's very from the guts. It's a reaction that people follow through. So paying attention to the events, so stay informed and
Okay.
address the part of your customers that are, suffering because of those events. If you have a big market in Taiwan and there's a hurricane coming, or typhoon or whatever, I'm sorry, something. It's
A
very late
weather
at night.
catastrophe,
A
another one.
catastrophe, then be aware of that, and address it, and acknowledging it is enough. Paying attention to the rise of new needs is another thing that I would recommend they do, in order to build a solid online portfolio, because what you do in stores is different from what you do online, right? And what you offer as a value is different. The fact that you diversify your portfolio, and instead of selling just perfume, you now sell, hand sanitizers, is a sign. It
Mm.
speaks to people who are following you. It's one of those intangible communication points that you don't tell, and so diversifying the portfolio to respond to the current needs, is very important, and those who do benefit from it. Candles are selling 150 to 200% more
Right.
from January to April, or something like this. I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly the months, but within a very short frame in 2020, sales went up a lot because the needs changed. Hand sanitizer, aromatherapy, holistic medicine, personal hygiene. Um, um, all of these things constitute about 1% of all prestige sales, but there's a huge potential for all of this to go up. Diversifying product, actually, which is the hardest thing to do, I guess, is one way to increase presence online. It's not through content, but it's through product. And a lot of them, a lot of people or brands who are only now starting to have an online presence kind of forget that. They're just trying to sell their fragrances, forgetting that there are a lot of other areas that they could very successfully and lucratively cover. Another thing, very simple, they need to clean up their online stores to make it workable. like I said, people are at different literacy levels when it comes to online
Yeah.
shopping and information consumption.
Right.
And so if it's not easy to use and if it doesn't look like you can trust it, people are not going to click the button. It's very simple. It has to be easy. Only about 6% are online purchases now, but it's of course going up very fast. Building a new strategy for how to get product to people. So sampling kits and building a sampling strategy is very important. It's a huge opportunity, I think, because there was nothing to connect the online space with the retail space until today. Whoever did it on the side, kind of a thing, and it was already dedicated to people who are active and trying things they've never tried before. This is bringing this possibility to the front and closes the loop, and it's huge. I can't imagine anything except for a pandemic where people are mandated to stay indoors that this could have happened. There's nothing else. So I think
Absolutely.
brands should consider that. um, Not frequent communication, but good communication with good content is very important. And not everybody's good at everything. Penhaligon does IGTV, I think. Zirjov started the ambassadorship groups on Facebook. I think Joe Malone was doing master classes. Dawn Spencer Hurwitz does, it's like a jamming session. It's like listening to a jamming session of music, because she composes live. I mean, who does that,
Yeah.
So different brands put more focus on their favorite channel or the one that works for them, but the content needs to be coherent. It has to be authentic, because otherwise people are not going to believe you, and it's going to be hard to maintain the lie, right? It has to
Right.
be meaningful, and it has to pay attention to the events, like I said. So content is very, very important, of course. And the last thing I would say to build to make sure that you cover all bases in online is to start thinking about customization, because if this is becoming a self-servicing industry, um, even temporarily, I think customizable services are very important. So some small firms are doing like fittings. You can create a fragrance profile and they send you a few samples within that range. That's kind of a customized service. Some have personal questionnaires and create subscription kits. I think I learned about Sana Jardin, which is a French Moroccan model, which I discovered them in Florence. I loved their concept. They're doing live consultation, so one-on-one sessions, which is fantastic. Some larger firms with a lot of money are starting to bring artificial intelligence and real-time data processing into the
Exactly.
fold,
Yes.
and they're creating programs that are working in parallel with their dedicated app. Um, so it's embedded in their online shopping online store, so that these live consultations are happening during the shopping process. And of course, a broad set of data is being collected about each customer's online behavior while in the process, which is very invaluable. But I don't think we're going to have access to some of those stats anytime soon. It's interesting to think about that. Of course, there are other things happening in hard technology and things that you can touch, because they're developing all these machines that can solve some of the problems when we go back into the stores, things that are touchless, that can help you test the fragrance not on skin but on this device that diffuses it. You can do layering on it. So they're
Right.
working on some very, very advanced olfaction related stuff that are exciting, but they're not out yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
I was gonna say, I mean, you've touched on so many great topics.
sorry.
So quick, and there's two things I want to go back over. One is the fact that now, I mean, if you are shy, if what we are able to do really is to shop online and to discover, at least discover initially online, then the online shop is basically the showcase. And so the experience that you have when you come to this space has got to be compelling and pull you in and make you curious and entertain you. Are there any like do's and don'ts that the brands can do to make that more more of a visual experience, more of a sense, maybe with music, or are things that they can combine to really capture the attention of their audience?
Yes, absolutely. But I don't think we can speak about just the website, because the website is actually the ultimate point. And by
Right.
then, anybody who's willing to try something they've never heard about before has to have been either shocked through something, or educated in a way that's very easy to consume for them, so that when they get there, they have that baby reaction of seeing something that's familiar, that's reconfirming that what they know is correct. So for that, it's very important to have this coherence in messaging, and it has to be multi-channel. So the website and the shop are the last point they touch, and that needs to respond to the need at that point. So if they learn about the brand, they studied the brand, they've seen it on multiple channels, they've been convinced that that's the brand they want to try, they maybe found somebody who's endorsing the brand and they trust that person, and then somehow they ended up somewhere online with a link that takes them to the shop. Hey, we have 5% off, or here's the first 3 samples are free, and if you like any of them, you get a 10% off the full bottle. They click on that, and that takes them to the shop. When they get to the shop, they're at the end of their journey, and they're already in the bag, if the shop looks clean and safe and is easy to use. Again, so
Okay.
every
Right.
step of the way, I think, has to be flawless. And I know it's hard, but there are some do's and don'ts that integrate pretty much every effort and apply to any activity and any action a brand would take. The first one is, of course, pick a purpose and be authentic. You have to be able to be authentic, because
Exactly.
otherwise people smell it. And it shows in the voice. No matter what you say, how you say it, whether it's in writing or it's a video somewhere, whether you're you want to build an expert profile and go and present yourself at events, it doesn't really matter. If you're not authentic, things are going to squeak at some point, and
Right.
those are people who you've lost. So authenticity, multi-purpose is another thing, and I touched it on the portfolio talk earlier. But it goes hand in hand with increasing the number of touch points. That's very important. So pick a color scheme, pick a name, pick what kind of brand you want to be, and pick a few things that you think represent that message and match the product you put out. Because if you want to be all rosy and fairy tale-y and your fragrance are all smoke and tar, so
Uh,
some things don't work.
Incoherence. Yeah. You need to be
Exactly.
coherent.
So
Yeah.
make it make
Consistent.
sense
Hmm.
at any point. If somebody finds out anything about your brand, make it so that every single thing that somebody can discover is coherent with the totality of the brand, without being redundant, hopefully. But increasing the number of touch points is very, very important. That can be informational. So that means be on social media, be online, be on
Yeah.
all channels of all kinds of content. And you don't have to create separate content for all of them. If you film an interview, let's say I'm filming an interview with you, right? And
Hmm.
we're both saying things. You can use my voice in a podcast. You can use the video, put it up on YouTube. You can use quotes in a blurb that you want to put on Instagram or something. You can reuse content based on where you're going to use it. So it doesn't necessarily need to be very labor intensive, particularly if you know what you're talking about and you're authentic. But make sure you're present on all these places, because each of them has ways to direct people to learn
Right.
more and then ultimately back into the shop, right? So that's informational. The other kind of the touch point strategy is make sure that the access is wider. So do partnerships, be on other people's websites, do partnerships with, I don't know, distributors, perfumeries, influencers. Why not? You know, if there are other online places with a lot of traffic of the kind you want, because you need
Yeah.
to know what kind of people you would like to see in your shop, pick
Right.
those places and try to also have touch points. It can be a beautiful photo of something you did today. It can be a short recording of your process. It can be a short message of the brand owner. Hey, I'm sorry this happened in Taiwan, and we're all thinking about you. I hope everybody's safe. Anything, you know,
Mm.
you can afford to be personal in a digital um, era. So touching all these points with a link to your website, or depending on what the message or content is, directly to the store, or maybe to an educational material you have on your blog, everything has to converge. But the condition is have presence. If you're not
Yeah.
there, they're not going to find you. And then in practical life, this can be achieved elsewhere too, but it can still has to be managed online. The subscription services, customization services, all of those other things that are not necessarily buying product, but they're buying something, or they're accessing something that adds value, and it's perceived as value that your brand is delivering them. So make sure you're everywhere, basically. Make sure you're everywhere. Make sure you're saying the same thing, and make sure you are authentic, because that's going to make it simpler. Another do, I would say, is for brands to keep an eye out on numbers, and not just sales, but numbers for the industry, numbers, you know, read reports, see what's happening, see how people behave. The
Yeah.
perfume sales went up. It went up surprisingly, which is
Yes, it did.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And not only fragrance sales, but fragrance related products, everything went up. And there are a lot of explanations that make sense for this phenomenon. People are looking for comfort. People are more free to wear stuff. In Western countries, a lot of workplaces don't allow you to wear fragrance at work. So now you're at home because you're not bothering
You
anybody.
can do what you want. Yeah,
It's what you want.
exactly.
People feel like they're not going out, but they still want to replicate the feeling of going out, so they put fragrance on. People want to remember something they forgot, or they want to remember. They put fragrance on. It's a comfort and self-realization. There are a lot of reasons for which somebody might want to define and recreate a space at home. So yeah, fragrance went up. Another thing is money moved from, hey, I used to go out to all the Michelin
Uh,
star
right.
restaurants. I no longer do that because I can't. Yeah, you can order some gourmet takeout, but it's not the same, right? I'm not going to drop $400 on an exploratory small dish full of bacon something, you know?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to put it towards something that I can use now. I'm not going to buy a purse. I'm not going to buy shoes. These still happen, but
Yeah, less
instead of
so, yes.
less so. So
Absolutely.
instead of buying that, I'm buying something that I can use now. And fragrance is making part of, yeah.
Yeah, well,
So
it's the self-care movement that fragrance can be part of that, because as you said, it's
absolutely,
comfort, it's memories,
absolutely.
it's it's transporting you, it's taking you somewhere else, and it's enhancing your home environment. It's all of this.
The multi-purpose I was talking about earlier, and the diversification of portfolio. There's such a big opportunity there, because
Yeah.
this self-care, holistic approach to scent and olfaction and well-being. I was reading somewhere that roll-ons and pillow mists sales
My goodness, yes.
went up 700%.
Well, so many people are having sleep issues that, spraying a comforting, and they're separated from family. So
Yeah,
spraying something that reminds you, or
close.
something that's going to help you to relax, to sleep better, is a natural.
It makes complete sense, and it is a very, very big opportunity, I think, for those who are quick enough to try to seize it.
Yeah.
So all these things are, I feel like I'm talking a lot about stuff that are off online, but they're all connected because, a business a positioning starts way before they get to say it somewhere. It starts with the intent. It starts with the business strategy, and if that is moving fast enough to adapt to the new needs of an audience they already have, I think the natural effect of that is that it's going to show in whatever content they produce. So these are the do's. The try to find your authentic. The try to multi-purpose. Try to cover as many touch points online as possible, and make
Yes.
sure that when they do work and the person goes from hearing the name of the brand to becoming curious because they like the look or they like a keyword or they vibe with the eco-friendly or ethical claim or something which is perceived as an extra value. They see or hear or read something, then they want to know more, and then they find maybe an educational material from you talking about the effects of over harvesting of sandalwood or frankincense in Oman. And then from that, they see an influencer or they see a person they trust, hopefully, talk about one of the products in a very factual manner and very sincere manner. So partnerships are very important. Who you give your content and your product to is equally important to what you do or say. There will be I can see it already. People are being shifted and influencers are being sifted and content is changing fabric and some things are disappearing for the better, for the worse. I don't know. It's not my place to say, but I do see that everything has to be coherent. And if somebody in this chain, from your partners to your representatives to your employees, if anybody shows that they're not believing or they're not knowing what they're talking about, it's bad. It's bad. And some companies are okay with like booms, they launch, they sell a lot and then they disappear. Quick buck, that's fine too. If you're out to make money, that's fine. But if you're an artisan brand trying to maintain an artistry level that keeps or consecrates perfumery as another art, which I believe it is, then you can't afford this kind of association. Touch points are very, very important. And then keeping an eye on numbers. So these are the do's. The don't is don't get stuck. I think it's bad, but if you continue to do what you've been doing and you're not happy, things are not working out for you, it's not the time to be stubborn. We can't rely on legacies, on brand heritage. We can't. If it's not working for you, change it. Because we don't know what's going to be on the other side. And we do see that some things work really well for brands that are moving quickly. So don't continue to do things by, inertia is a bad thing, but
Yeah.
these are the do's and the don'ts. I'm sorry. I get
I was
to.
gonna, then I was thinking because I think that what also happened from the pandemic is a lot of brands did not have a digital presence
Mm-hmm,
were forced to, they had to survive, so they had
mm-hmm,
to create one.
mm-hmm.
And so some of them may not understand what the key data points are that could be of use. So if there were, say, 5 key KPIs, so performance indicators that a brand could look at from the data that they receive from analytics. Which are the most useful that they could then react to? Because I mean, there's visits, there's the interaction that they're going to have.
It's
What do you think?
very. I'm afraid this is one question I cannot answer, and the reason for that is the fabrication or the recent habits of fabricating communities when there are none. That
Uh,
goes from, either buying followers
okay,
for their Insta account to collaborating with people with a lot of followers that who are maybe even active in consuming the content relevant to that brand, but that
okay.
never translates into sales. So the
Uh,
only, the only thing to keep an eye on is what you think your reach is. How many people do you think are aware of your brand based on visits on your accounts, your website, your social media, and your collaborators pages that feature your product or your brand, or your story or your offering. See how many have consumed content and how does that translate into sales. And you can only judge that if you follow it for a period of time, and in the
right.
meantime you change something. Okay, I started the campaign here. In the middle, we split the message into 2. So instead of putting an ad here that says this, we put it there and says the same thing. Has there been any change? So it has to be comparative. But I don't have numbers that I can give you to say, if you get
No,
10,000 visits, that's great, because that doesn't mean anything anymore.
no. Mm,
That's a problem. I believe repeat purchases are a very good indicator that that's a long-term part of your community. I think referrals are very important when consumers talk about your product without having been paid to do so, and without calling themselves influencers or experts or
mm,
whatever, representatives, ambassadors, whatever. If they do it on their own, a positive a reaction to your offering, and a volunteer referral is always important. Um, I think that also depends on the kind of things you're putting out. So it can be a product, or it can be, today you did an Insta story that looks really good with your new bottles, and it got shared 1,000,000 times. When you do
uh-huh.
something in black and white, it doesn't get reshared of the same,
Okay.
some
Yeah,
things that can only be analyzed comparatively. How did it
right.
do now, then, and how is it doing now? But I think I'm sorry, I really can't
No,
help.
I think that's
Wish I could.
helpful. I think that's helpful.
I really wish I could say something else, but I think when it comes to numbers, the fabrication of reality, when it comes to
Yeah.
followership and communities, um, has somehow blurred that for people like me who you, look at data all day long, and there's nothing that I can give you. One thing is, and that's a given. How many people leave really fast after they got to your website? If they got there to consume content, if they stay and visit more than 2.7 pages, that's a good sign. They're going to leave and remember you, for example. And that can be very easily found in, analytics. If you have a WordPress website or Wix, or it comes with like simple analytics. And I think bounce rate sometimes it's called, is a very good teller of interest. Whether or not that translates into sales, you can follow by following the path on your website and see where they went from there, or where they came from. That's another, way to go back on the thread and see who sent them, what page, what profile, who sent them, who talked about you, how did they find out about you. But number wise, I'm so sorry, I can't give you.
No, I think that you actually covered what I was asking, is that, so where are they coming from? How are they directed to your site? Whether there's multiple or repeat purchase, the length of time they spend on the page or
Sure.
on the site itself. All of these are super important indicators that a brand who maybe has just started their site this year should look at and can then react to. And certainly what you mentioned about judging your campaign and comparing it and seeing the performance.
Another thing there are a lot of intangibles, but one other thing is to follow what words are being repeated from your message into how people describe you. For example, there's some things are very common sense, and I know a lot of brands do see it, and some of them systematically follow these things. Some of them go by guts because they're emotionally very smart and they get how people function. And some of them are very common sense. Like that, I'm sure anybody who's never managed the back end of a website but has common sense would look at them and say, of course, you need to know who sent them there. Of course, you want to see how long they spent on the page. Of course, you want to see how many times they clicked, or whether or not they chose to answer your short pop-up questionnaire, or if they ended up buying a sample, and if they did they end up buying the bottle later. But that needs time. If you haven't had a website, the path from somebody being made aware of your brand, knowing of your brand, willing to try, and then actually trying your brand is pretty long time-wise. And if they end up, so it's interesting to see what's going to be next.
Well, and that's a great segue, because the last question I was going to ask you is about the future, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier when you talked about things that are coming, but definitely I wanted to ask you, if you had a crystal ball, how would you see digital evolving in the next 6 to 12 months? How is the consumer experience going to evolve? How are we going to, what things are coming? How will we be using digital so that, as a small brand can maybe start putting together some kind of a proactive strategy?
I believe the first thing that we're going to witness, coming from brands, consumers mainly, but from brands as well, probably as a result of that, is polarization. I think there's going to be less content, because anybody who's just creating content for content's sake is getting tired. And they're going to get more tired. I mean, how many top 10 lists can you watch? Top 10 things to wear to the bathroom. Like, top 10 lists when you close your window. I don't know. They're running out of ideas because some of them are not connected to their audience or their collaborators. It's just it's irrelevant. So because of that, I think it's not always irrelevant, and it's not always bad. Don't get me wrong, but it's people are starting to look for constructive content that resonates with them, and not to be told something. Do this. Here's what I think. Here's what I ate in the morning. Nobody cares. So that kind of content online is going to become thinner, I believe. I'm already seeing it, I'm experiencing it. And the one that is staying will be polarized alongside a few threads of thought. Some are going to be, let's survive this, let's get together, let's share all of our experiences, that kind of approach to community.
Yes.
Another one is, I'm going to provide you something to forget you're in the predicament you're in. So then here's a fantasy world. Here's something to think about. Here's something to study. Here's something to learn. So it's going to be a service-driven type of content community making, I think. And the fast-paced volume versus quality is going to be on a different end. So you're going to have the service. I'm going to give you something. We're going to do something. And here's what I think. On this other end, I think the polarization is going to be clear. Both work for different audiences. Some people are getting tired with having to filter through this information. People are not necessarily information literate, not just in perfumery, but in general. They don't understand science. They're tired of listening to doctors saying contradictory things. They don't want to deal with choices. So for them, having somebody go, buy this, I wear it twice, it's pretty good, fall's coming, kind of hot, wear this. For them, that's making things easier, and they need that. They don't need to have to analyze, weigh, measure. So they prefer to be told. So I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that there will be a polarization of customers and brands around these two kind of, not necessarily opposite, but pretty separate and ways of building communities and maintaining communities online. The second thing we're going to see from everybody is that everybody is becoming smarter and more literate online. Whether you want it or not, you will get smarter, because we're forced to look at symbols. We're reading. And if we're not reading, we're watching, a video or listening to a podcast. We still have to get to it. We have to write it down. We have to type. We have to search for information. If you want to watch a movie, you still have to search and sort, which is annoying, particularly if you're doing it with friends. Nobody ever wants to watch the same movie on Netflix, right? It's the same thing, but you have to go in and type. We've been typing more than ever in our lives. We're writing, we're trying to communicate. Some people don't have this exercise. They're forced to do it, and they're doing it. Literacy is going up. And I'm not reading, I'm not talking about capacity to read. I'm talking about the exercise of creating communication, initiating a request for communication through a very symbolic, the neurocortex, highly symbolic, highly abstract neuroactivity. So yeah, it's a practice. People read more than they used to. Some of them read bad stuff, but they read. They're practicing reading and they're practicing writing. So literacy is going up. There will be ethos rather looking for purpose. Some more people are going to be looking for purpose now that they have the time. So from those very literate ones, like I said earlier, they will be looking for rallying around something or finding the thing that resonates with them. And they're going to be more focused in this search. They're going to go for quality. They're going to go for sincerity. They're going to go for meaning, for hope. So again, brand heritage doesn't mean anything anymore. We've been here from 1785, So what? I can't, your online store doesn't work.
It needs to be relevant now, right?
It needs to be relevant now. So what do you think about politics? The politics of the moment, wherever you are. What do you think? They haven't said anything on stuff in 4 months. People are dying. Where are they? People care. Customers care. and they're finally starting to understand that their money is powerful, and they are driving some of these things, and financial boycott is the only thing that works.
Well, it's definitely true that the consumer, more than ever, is voting with their wallet and supporting the brands that have a philosophy that's in line with their own, or one that is taking social actions, or demonstrating that they think in a certain way, and they're proving it by their actions, and that those are then the products that the consumer ends up buying, because
No
they
doubt.
would rather give their money to the brand that is in consistent with their own philosophies.
Yeah, and there's an egotistical part of this. You want to feel good about spending money, and this is one way to do that. But
Yes.
it is value added. It's very important. It doesn't really matter if the product you're buying fulfills the function you bought it for, or some
Yes.
emotional need you have. It doesn't matter. If it does you good, you have the money, and we can't ignore that. People who sell things cannot ignore that. And it makes complete sense, particularly now when you're alone with your thoughts and you want hope and you want things, and you want community, and you can't socialize and you can't feel like you belong unless you rally into this current of a bigger purpose. So that's one way to manifest it. Speaking of which, I do think we will see consumer generated content. There was no, apart from some perfumeries online, not brands, stores, but perfumeries, there haven't been ways for consumers to create content for the brands. Sometimes I think I've seen a few attempts, and I know Zerjov was doing it through the nature of the way they structured their community. But you would see very fancy reviews on forums, the long ones that have stories.
Yes.
And some of them are boring, and some of them are fantastic. Some of them are short and exquisite, and some of them are long and intricate and doing great writing prowess. There is no space accommodated by brands for this kind of content. And I think it's a very big resource to tap into. Make a review section on your website. Move the conversation from somebody else's channel, from some big writer's, blog, or some big reviewer's YouTube channel. Move those 400 impressions from there to your page somehow. People are eager to contribute. People have opinions, good or bad.
They want to share.
And they want to share, and they have time to share now. So that is a missed opportunity. But I do believe that since people are now, actively seeking rather than sitting and waiting to be served, they will also shift their perception of their relationship with the product, and it's going to be a more fluid type of experience. Okay, I'm using it. This is what it does for me, and this is what I do for it. There will be.
It's a back and forth.
I think there's room for that. So I'm not seeing it happening per se, but I feel it's bubbling. And I would I'm predicting that if somebody's catching on, or somebody wakes up with this kind of idea, if somebody's watching right now, if you're a brand and you're watching this, think about it. So consumer generated content for the brands. A community is give and take. It has to be circular. So this is one way to do it. And then when it comes to styling and not just in product, but also in visual, which translates into the online space. I have a thing. I'm a data collector myself because I'm such a nerd. So I devised a questionnaire that I sent to perfumers, and all of them said it was very fun because it's kind of like a Proustian questionnaire with with some things added, but in a
Okay.
perfumery context, long and scandalous, and and the things that a lot of them said, I am starting to see in the online space as being more successful than other kinds of productions. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. The first thing is a return to clean. I, I, I think that's normal after every pandemic. There's been a lot of washing hands and sanitizing and shifts in personal hygiene, olfactive profiles. You know, it's how lavender moved from being a woman's smell to being a man's definitory kind of ingredient. It's in the aftermath of one of these pandemics. So there's a return to clean, and that translates into visual minimalism, light colors. We're moving away from tar and dragons and in the motors and
Gothic, yes.
gothic and industrial and cement and kill me now, it's all of that, which is great. It was fun while it lasted, but I think we need to breathe, and we
Yeah.
need to breathe with our eyes, and we need to breathe with our noses. And so there's a return to clean and to safe, which is
Of course.
natural reaction, and to beautiful. There's a return to pretty. It has started a while back. You would go to a perfumery fair or an event, and you have all these abstract and avant-garde and this and that, and then you would have something that's pretty, well made, of course, hopefully, but also pretty, and you're like, ah, that's the rebel amongst a sea of.
But it's a breath of fresh air
Yeah,
as well in
yeah.
in a time where we're looking for hope.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
The beginning of that, I think, happened last year when I noticed that's how I read it, and I think I was right. There were a lot of soly notes, pretty soly notes, but I think that was the transition into what we will see next, which is return to true pretty, complex, sophisticated, but pretty, not diva, not macho, not stunning, not killer room. It's going to be, I think, so clean. I think the colonia style is coming
Okay.
back.
Yes.
I see it. I hope it. And that means fresh online, fresh in the nose, and return to pretty pastels. I see a lot of what we would call cheesy 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and now
Yeah.
it's safe to use. It's okay to use. It's fine to use a tear here and there. It's okay. It doesn't hurt. And in visual and in videos and personification and vulnerability, and we're all in this together. So this is a return in both perfumery style and visual and online tone approach. I think that's next. And the second big current is fantasy, true fantasy. Perfumers are going to go nuts and create fantasy. And I think the stories are going to be phantasmagorical and exciting. Just like you watch a, what is it called in English? My English gets numb this time of night. It's my fourth language. Come on.
I know,
hard.
I know,
It's hard.
no, but it's definitely like epic stories and
Epic stories in those
the
movies with princesses and dragons.
legend and
Yes,
hero
and
and
folklore.
right, okay.
Folklore. Yeah, I think that's another
It's another escape. It takes us away from what we're living to a life that we can have just ethereally and in our minds.
Yeah.
And
So
the
I think
fragrance to go with that takes you there.
yeah. So I don't know if it's the markets dictating these trends, or the trends are, or because perfumers are going through cycles and this is the next phase, what's there to be explored? I mean, it should be an easy one. The Turkey has been overselling the Colonia.
The Colonia, it's on fire.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic, and the 4711 and just things like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? So I think these are the two stylistic trends.
I want to thank you for your time and for all your content and your sharing your thoughts and your knowledge with us. It's really been very, very helpful. So thank you again.
It's my pleasure.
Thank
and I'm happy to meet you finally.
I know, finally.
Okay, everyone, we're back. So I hope you enjoyed the videos. And as I said, let's do a little review of what you may have learned, what you heard, and I'll give you my feedback on what I think are the key takeaways based on the notes I took. Okay, so going back to the first video, so this is the digital festival and the brand founders. Okay, so what did we learn? Takeaway, online venues, doing the digital festival was a great online venue to bring people together, for people to network, for people to learn, for people to be entertained, to build the community, okay? And we saw that what Yosh told us was that the intimate conversations where it was like two perfumers together, better to do that in an Instagram environment because it was intimate. It was her fireside chat, and that if you have multiple people, then perhaps a Zoom environment is better for that. So let's take away. And when you have the perfumers, they don't necessarily have to talk about the brand. It doesn't have to be about your brand. And Geraldine said this too. It doesn't have to be about your brand. It can be about perfumery in general, because it's entertaining for people. We know this stuff, but the consumers don't, and they're hungry to learn. And we may be back in confinement, so this is something where what would intrigue you about a fragrance? I love amber fragrances, so maybe it's something about how amber is collected, how it's extracted. Just think about the kind of content that you could make for things like a masterclass, an Instagram TV, a live streaming. These are all subjects that could be very effective and interesting, that will draw your consumer to you. Geraldine also mentioned to us the importance of having a clean feed. This is your social media, how it rolls down, and making it clean, making it consistent, thinking about probably the colors, thinking about how images look next to each other. So have a clean feed. And post regularly, because if you don't post regularly, people are going to forget about you, right? They're going to be on to the next thing. So you have to keep them entertained. You have to keep top of mind. We also found out, well, I think we probably knew this, but you've got to be authentic. So Geraldine talked about how she worked with reviewers and influencers, and she put every review, regardless of what the person said, because what's coming across is honest and sincere, and people can cut through to what's not. So this is very important, that first of all, you work with people that like your brand, and secondly, that you let them be honest in what they tell you, what they want to write, and what they want to say about your products. Discovery kits. Yes, discovery kits. So these are super important. And in fact, I remember talking to Francois Duquesne about training, And discovery kits now are something that consumer can order it ahead of time. Then say there's a live streaming or an event, they can be at home discovering the fragrances as you're talking about them. Or if you don't have the event, at least they have the kit in the luxury of their own home that they can sit back, they can try one different fragrance every day. They have time to live with the fragrance and understand what they think about it, to see how it wears on their skin. And with the kit, there's also an incentive to purchase. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. So that was a key takeaway. Then let's see. So then we get on to really what we learned from Dana in the second video. So what she told us is, first of all, now that we're in video, online, people are getting the visual cues. They're not getting the olfactory cues. So have to think about the image that you're putting forward. And this, I think, was very important that she talked about how we need to be excited. So when you think about shipping something to a consumer, what is now this term unboxing. Unboxing is when you open the box and you take the product out and you unwrap it, and there needs to be some kind of a wow. Oh, look at what I got and look at how beautiful it is. And now I'm even more excited by what I bought and what I want to smell, or what I ordered and what I want to smell. So the unboxing, the sense of excitement. So then, yes, of course, we know that brands need to align with a cause, a purpose, a value, because everything is value driven now. And, whether you're eco-friendly, eco-conscious, whether you're a heritage brand, whatever it is, the value that you pick, you need to say what you're going to say and do what you say. So say what you're do what you say what you do. Walk your talk. Because if you don't, you can't hide anymore. Everyone's going to know that you're not authentic. Next was recognizing that the way the world has changed, there's new needs. So if you can, diversify your portfolio to respond to the new needs, if you can. But at least be aware of what they are. Clean up your online store. Make sure that it's easy to use, easy to navigate, and easy to check out. Okay, these are like super key takeaways for everyone. You need to have good, strong content. It should be entertaining. You could have storytelling. You could have the masterclass. You could have the Instagram TV. You could have the interviews with people who are involved in the creation of your brand. And then you have to realize that the content you develop, you can use it different ways. So as Dana said, you can use the voice. You can use quotes from what were said. You can use the film. You can take images. So creating the content and then using it for specific digital touch points where you kind of stretch your content to use it in different ways. Think about partnerships. So what is a like-minded influencer or company or entity that you could work with that will expand your reach, so you're getting a new consumer who discovers you for the first time. Be everywhere online and be consistent with your message. So again, don't mix up what you say. Be consistent in what you say about your brand. because the repetition of the message is going to keep the message clear to the consumer, first of all, and it's more memorable. Then we talked about KPIs. Okay, KPIs, key performance indicator. These have to be measured over time, of course, because they have to be compared. So you want to look at who's coming to your site, how many people are coming to your site, how much time are they spending on the site, how many pages do they look at, how are they directed to the site, do they make a purchase, do they make a repeat purchase? So these are all indicators of your brand health, which should be available through most site analytics. But there's something that you want to compare, and certainly if you change campaigns, you want to compare the campaign from the original one to the moment that you changed it to a date in the future, to see how did it change, what happened, did it go up, did it go down, did we grow? So all types of analytics and data that you should be looking at. I know this is pretty basic for many of you, but I think that for small, young brands that maybe are just starting, I'm really hoping that this is helpful. So just a few more points. Dana talked about polarization. So polarization is, the way she spoke about it, it's where, we've all been on digital for so long now. And some people just want the information, and then they're going to make their decision. They can do it on their own, but give me the information and then I'll decide. Whereas others need to be told what to do. They rely on a key opinion leader. They rely on a brand saying, this is the best thing. You need to buy this. This is my best seller. Whereas other people will want to just tell me what's in it. I want to discover on my own. I'm confident with my own decision making, and leave it at that. So the two different schools of thought. And then some of the last points she talked about were, is it possible for you to create a space on your site where you can have consumer generated content? So think about creating a page where the consumer can share their review, where they can say what they think, where they can express their opinion. So that's the consumer generated content. And the last point that she made was about these two trends that she sees coming in the future. So you have one that's kind of pretty and pastel, and a return to sort of ethereal images that I think we would say these are really comforting. And then on the other hand, you have something that's more fantasy, heroes, epic stories. So something that takes us away to a different world, and lets us dream. I mean, we have to dream. We have to dream. We have to be inspired. We have to have hope, and we have to carry on. So those are the key takeaways that I see. I know that this is a virtual environment, but we're not live. So please, if anyone has questions, comments, I invite you to share them with directly to me at essentionnel.com. To the website. You can reach me through the website. And any questions that there are, I would be happy to reply, and perhaps write another article about this topic. And hopefully I will see you all in Milan in spring 2021. Okay, hope you enjoyed everything. See you later. Bye-bye.